Welcome to Master Your Market. I'm Chris Ashmore. Now, before I did what I'm doing now, which is podcasting for brands, I used to be a headhunter in Tokyo. I used to work in a company called Optia Partners, and I used to recruit lawyers for multinational firms in Japan and East Asia. I worked with a guy called Nick Mina, and when I left Japan to come back to Australia with my family in 2014, Nick stayed on, and he has since started his own recruiting firm called Aristos Mina. And we talked today about the difficulty of recruiting in Japan. It's one of the toughest markets in the world, and how we would be glued to the telephone all those years ago, particularly in the beginning, but how important it is for personal communication. Well, it is in business anyway, but particularly the face-to-face networking and phone calls. Nick tells me about how he markets himself in Japan and how he's changed from doing contingency recruiting to retained searches. I love this interview. Stick around. I think you'll get a heap out of this. Well, firstly, Nick, welcome. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. And we've known each other for quite a long time now, so I know your story. But for those listening and watching, can you just fill us in with, back to the start? What enticed you to come and live in Japan?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. This is great. What enticed me? I guess adventure, and needed to get things figured out. I should have had things figured out. I guess I was pretty directionless, so I didn't have things figured out. So I thought, when I saw the job ad for an English conversation school, and what prompted me, it advertised, come to Japan, teach English, no experience needed. So why not? Just let's do it. Let's go out there. Let's figure things out.
And how many years ago was that, and how old were you?
23, 24. I just graduated 2001. 2 weeks before 9/11. And so it's been 9 years as an English teacher. Then got into agency recruitment.
Well, for listeners who don't know what the industry is about, but particularly for those who don't know what the industry is about in Japan, because it's a different kettle of fish in Japan, executive search recruitment. What is it, and what did you do? What did you specialise in?
So I specialized in agency recruitment for investment management companies. So essentially US and European asset management companies operating in Japan. And so I recruited Japanese nationals working in those Japanese subsidiaries of those multinational companies in Japan. So working with 4 to 5 companies for their hiring needs in various functional areas, sales, marketing, product development, client service, across different seniorities, junior, mid-level, senior, and helping them to fill their positions in Japan.
And how did you feel in the beginning? How was it? Was it challenging? As a fellow recruiter, I probably know the answer. It was bloody hard work, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we had to do 100. We had to set appointments. Try to book 100 candidate meetings in the first 3 months through cold calling. So, I managed to do that. and I was working with a researcher in the Manila office, Hannah, and together we built out the database, and we cold called, name collected, and then I called people at their offices and asked to meet with me. And I think they met because this is around April 2011. This is just after Lehman. Everyone was curious about the job market, which had pretty much collapsed at that point. And so these people, these first 100 appointments, they met with me just to understand what the market was. Of course, I didn't know anything at all. And so those first 100 appointments those first 100 candidates I met were my teachers. They taught me everything. And so I'm just sorry I wasted their time. I didn't know anything at all. But they were very helpful and instrumental in bringing me up to speed. And then I think it's like, those first 300 people, that's when you reach critical mass and you have, you start to understand the market and understand the industry, and you can talk more competently about it. But yeah, for those first 100 appointments, I was essentially talking and sounding like a dummy.
Right. Yep. But I suppose the idea is that you are building your. I was explained in the beginning that it's like a supermarket shelf. You're starting a business and your shelves are empty, so you can't sell anything to anyone yet until you stock those shelves. And you're doing that with your candidates. You're building your portfolio of candidates, and the idea is a nice round number of 100. And then once you've got that number, you've got their details, you then go and meet clients. And you say to the clients, look, are you looking for a particular item on the supermarket shelf? Are you looking for a 35-year-old manager? And they might say yes or no, but at least you can start a conversation with the client. So you need those candidates to start with. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that's right. So one of the things that we used to do back then is we would spec a candidate. That means we would contact a prospective hiring company, and then we would say to that company, we've recently been talking to a 35-year-old sales manager in this area. Is this the kind of person that you would be looking for? This kind of person has expressed interest in your team. And then that would either lead to, yes, that is exactly what we're looking for, or it would lead to, no, actually, we're not looking for that, but here's what we are looking for. Could you help us with that? So it would be a case of, giving them a hypothetical profile that they would be interested in, and using that to find out what they do want, and then getting business off of that.
Right. And how tough in the beginning was it?
I had no jobs. I think I couldn't get a job on. I couldn't get a job on for months. My first big break, I think, I cold call the president a few months in of a small asset management company with 25, 30 people in Tokyo. I cold called the president. I booked a meeting with him, and then that led to getting a few jobs. But my first placement, Chris, was actually 18 months after I started. Yep. So it's actually a miracle that I wasn't fired. It's I don't know why they kept me on. And so April 2011, no placement in 2011. 2012, one placement. Mm-hmm. And then 2013, the hiring market for asset management industry in Japan started to really come back. Yep. And then things started to pick up, 5 or 6 placements in 2013. And then I think 2014, I think I was the second or third top biller at Optia in 2014. So 2014 was my first great year.
And that's the thing with recruiting in the beginning. not so much perhaps in Australia. I'm not sure how it really works in Australia, but people might join a recruiting company and their portfolio, the names are already there, they're collated. But in Japan, when we started, we had to start from scratch. We had to meet people from zero until, months and years later, meeting over, hundreds of people. And it takes, it took me a year to make my first placement. But once you are there over a number of years, then you start to make a name for yourself. Other recruiters drop out of the market, and you're the person, you're the dude that clients know and have been with you over those years. Would that be fair to say that it gets easier the longer? I mean, it's an obvious question. It gets easier the longer you're at it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's at the point now where, I would say, in fact, if you type in, do a Google search, Tokyo Asset Management Recruiter. Now, my company name won't come up, but there'll be a few other companies that pop up. But as for like individuals, I'm the only individual name like that is coming up in that search. And so, within the industry now, I think I'm fairly well known. I think people know Nick Mina, even if they don't remember his company. So they'll remember. Nick Mina at there was a Nick Mina at Optia. There was a Nick Mina at JSource, and now he's got a new company. And what's it called? Nobody remembers. But they remember Mina. They call me Mina. Sometimes they just call me Mina.
Is that a Japanese thing?
It's actually a Japanese female first name.
Of course, yes.
Hey, Mina.
Well, it's funny, when I type in Nick Mina into Google, not that I'm stalking you, but if you type Nick Mina into Google, you often get the top searches are Nicki Minaj. I don't know if you realise that.
Nicki Minaj, yeah.
So, are you still doing that same area, asset management?
That's right. I'm still doing it. Right. So after leaving Optia 2018, I went off on my own. I was introduced to a company called JSource through my friend Matt Klein, and that was the first time to work not as a salaried employee, but as what is it called? Kojin jigyonoshi. So contractor, freelance, sole proprietor, essentially. So not fully incorporated, but working with another company that had a recruitment license, and then using their name, using their license, and working just full commission, no salary. Right. So did that from 2018 to 2021, and then launched my company in 2021.
So full commission, meaning that you only get money once you make a placement. If you get no placement for 6 months, you get no money for 6 months. And why
it's funny
then?
You mentioned 6 months because that is what happened. I didn't get a placement for the 6 months.
but when you get a placement, compared to other places in the world, it's a big lot of money because Japan has some of the highest commission rates in the world. Is it 35% of that candidate's salary? If you introduce successfully to a company and they hire them, you get paid 30 to 35% of that individual salary. Is that right?
That is correct, especially the non-finance sector industries. So fast-moving consumer goods, semiconductor, pharma, they're in the 30-35% range. Financial services around the 25% range. Though these days I don't do anything below 30%. So that is correct. Of first year's base salary, and I think in tech they base it off of OTE, on target earnings. So these are the highest recruitment fees in the world. It is all of the surveys from Manpower Group show it's It's I think we are tied with Argentina now for the country with the hiring managers expressing the greatest difficulty in filling job roles.
Yeah.
We're tied with Argentina and one other country. Yeah.
Right. So why did you go out on your own?
Got to be my own boss, man. I gotta be my own boss. But the funny thing that happened is I realized that so you do this thing where you set up your own company and you become your own boss, and then you realize the client is still the boss. So that was the next phase for me was I want to be truly my own boss. I want to be fully. There was this phrase. My copywriting trainer, Phil Tyerman, in the UK, and I think he published a book, but he couldn't sell it to me for some reason. He was in the UK, but he was talking about this concept of being a sovereign business owner, and that I became obsessed with this phrase. So it really stuck. And what does it mean to be a sovereign business owner? And I realized we are not. We as agency recruiters, we are order takers. Even the best of us, we're order takers. And we are really just, we're following a client-led process. It's commoditized industry. Even before you come to the client, they have all of these presuppositions as to how things are going to work. What the fee is going to be, what the process is going to be. And so, that was the next step for me was, I have to be fully sovereign, which is like to say, just as if you were in any other tradesman or any other business owner in any other field other than agency recruiting, you're going to set your own terms, whether if you're a yoga teacher and you're doing private yoga lessons for corporates or C-suites at corporates, or you're landscape gardening, you're going to set your own terms. You may even charge a quota, Yep. So that was really, that's been my thing now, is moving in that direction. So I've started to move in that direction.
Uh-huh. I completely understand and agree with what you're saying there, and I liken it to, when you work for yourself, when you've got your own business, you can work when you want, you can work with you can work when you want, you can work where you want, you can work with whom you want, and to a degree you can do that if you're a boss within a company.
Right.
But the clincher is you can work how you want.
Yeah.
So you can set your own rules because you're not abiding by a particular company's way of doing things, and it's that how is probably the clincher for you and for me as well. Can we turn to, so this is
even more than money, by the way, even more than money. If I really came to that conclusion, I came to that conclusion. I realized it's because for example, 2021 was my best year ever financially. I think it was easily over 40 million in billings.
That's Japanese yen. What would that be in, say, American dollars? Do you think?
Right now, I'm too humiliated to even tell you that exchange rate. Okay, can we go back by the 2021 exchange rate, which was closer to, which was, which I think is closer to, is that four? Was that maybe it's like 456K Canadian at that time.
Okay, almost $500,000
at that time, right?
Yep, at that time.
In the U.S., I'm guessing that's like
300,000,
380, something like that at that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was that was money, but that was order taking. That was order taking. That was like working. That was like 40 vacancies in the year, and filling like maybe 9 to 10 of them. Right?
So you're talking, when you say order taking, we're talking about contingency. Is this the point that you're trying to make. So a lot of recruiting is in Japan, contingency work, but there's this element of retained recruiting, retained search.
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between the two and your thoughts about them?
Okay. All right. So contingency, no win, no fee basis, payable on placement. Payable on placement, working in conjunction with other suppliers on the same assignment. Retained is a financial commitment from the client. It's a financial commitment paid on commencement of work, enabling you to provide a robust search methodology with the goal of committing to working with the client until we achieve an outcome, until we reach a result.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts on it.
Yep.
It's, my God, like that will be a rant.
Give me the rant. Give me the rant. Why don't you like contingency?
Well, I was just listening to, I don't know if you know this guy, Benjamin Dennehy, who's the UK's most hated sales trainer. Have you seen,
No.
have you seen this? You haven't seen this?
No.
Really?
No.
Okay. I thought he's all over LinkedIn.
I'll write this down.
Right. So he talks about the sales matrix and how salespeople have to escape the sales matrix. And I just really, you can map that concept easily onto agency recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we've internalized all of these, these presuppositions about how agency recruitment will work. Because when we come into Optia, for example, we have in our mind this model of this boiler room model of, it's almost like, stockbrokers. And we're like, yeah, I got a deal. And it's like, oh, I got another one. And it's like the model in my head now, it's tradesman, it's not, it's I'm solving your problem. I'm like a landscape gardener. Or I'm a Formula One racing technician, okay, and your car has just pulled into the pit stop. It's not it's not this boiler room thing, it should be closer to being a blacksmith. So if I can go that far, but so I think an order taking is just a client-led process where it wouldn't happen in any other industry. If you were a yoga teacher and you went to any corporate, whether JP Morgan or Amazon, you would be dictating that process to them. You'd be saying, right, here's how it goes. You're going to pay this up front. I'm going to be doing, Mr. Miyagi style, wax on, wax off, before we get to the nitty gritty. And at no point does the prospect say, no, that's not what's going to happen.
Right.
At no point does the prospect dictate to you what the process is. But in agency recruitment, when I say order taking, that's what I mean, is the prospect or the client engages you. You receive an email. There's a job description attached. Say, hi, Nick-san. Just to let you know, we're now searching for a sales manager. We have a job description attached. We're going to be paying this much. We'll look forward to your candidates. I'm just rereading this email. Where is the part where you have asked me if I'm interested in working on your shitty role? At no point have you asked me that.
And it's the same email that the client company is sending to your competitors.
Correct.
They've just removed your name and put your competitor's name to the other. And you don't know actually how many you're competing with. It could be 3,
Correct.
It could be 10, it could be 30.
Yeah.
And so, and you don't get paid, or neither do your competitors get paid until whoever reaches the finish line first with the right candidate that they hire. And so it's a bit of luck of the draw, isn't it? If you get the right candidate and you've spent all this time, you may have spent a week working on it, and then your candidate gets pipped at the post by someone else, and it could even be an internal promotion at the last minute, you don't get paid for it unless they pay for your particular candidate. So contingency, I can't see how it's good for the recruiter, but it's not particularly good for the client either, because no one's really putting the effort into it, because they know there's no point dropping everything if they're not going to get paid at the end with all the effort that they put in. So I can't see how it helps anyone, this contingency business.
And the answer to that is that you're absolutely right. It isn't good for them. So this may be a quirk of the market that hasn't, when I think about what are the factors that are preventing them from realizing that and untangling that. But yeah, essentially, like these are status quo methods. This is the way it's always been. But the outcome is hit or miss. It's hit or miss for the agency and for the client side. You'll either come to a shortlist in 2 months, but rarely. You will often get that shortlist in 3, 4, 5 months. And so all of the knock-on effects of that, how does that impact the client and their business and their bottom line? Ultimately, you have a resignation, and during that resignation and replacement period, you have a short-staffed team, and they are struggling to hold the business together. And what's happening when you're struggling to hold that business together? You are, diverting your resources towards existing business. You are not, you're essentially leaving money on the table because you are not reaching out to prospects. I'm talking about the client here.
Yep.
So the opportunity cost of allowing that resignation and replacement period to be in that 3, 4, 5 month range before they have decided to hire a person, and then the additional 4 to 6 weeks for onboarding of the new joiner. In my industry, I can easily speculate as to how much money they've lost, and all of that has been factored in. So for them, they see it as the cost of doing business, which ultimately it's not. It just needs someone like me, like other agencies, to help them understand that better outcomes are available to them. If we have the courage to tell them, to help them realize that. We have to help them realize that, because if we tell them, they're not going to listen to us. So you have to help them realize it.
That's what you're doing with your business now, Aristos Mina, is you're going to clients and you're doing retained search. You're not doing contingency. And
no more contingency.
Are they receptive to that? Are they receptive to those points of view?
Some are. The biggest objection that we see so far is the bureaucratic obstacle, because we are dealing with the Japan subsidiary of multinational companies. So, it's often someone in headquarters. It's often this, we have a global system and we want to be aligned and consistent with that global system. Okay. So that's been the biggest obstacle so far, but I have managed to win a couple so far. Having very recently transitioned, into this new model. And for me, it's fine. Like I'm expecting to do like anywhere from 4 to 6 of these projects a year, which is totally aligned with how I want to recruit anyway. I don't like having multiple assignments in front of me. When we were at Optia, we would have anywhere from 5 to 8 or more assignments at one time. And I much rather I want to wake up in the morning and just have one assignment in front of me, and just give undivided attention to that. And then get that short list, and then have that little bit of downtime in between. So there's 4 to 6 projects per year, which we're on track to achieve. So that's totally enough, for me. If it's an average fee of like 4 to 4.2 million yen per project, that's totally enough. And then, so for me, going into any conversation with complete unattachment to the outcome, just relying on that war chest that I have to just be able to just say no to anything that doesn't fall within, my list of requirements, which is obviously you work with me. This position is not going to be listed on LinkedIn. It's not going to be on BizReach or any of these online job postings. If you do somehow get an applicant through another source, I'm going to get paid for that as well. You will pay on commencement. And also when I talk about my process, I don't just mean money. I mean also the process. I mean that I'm dictating that, yes, there will be a kickoff meeting with all the stakeholders. We will then have 2 weeks after that kickoff meeting, we will have a steering call with the relevant stakeholder. And in that steering call, maybe the first one will be 20 minutes and go through any challenges we're experiencing and then work with you to re-steer the search. And then from then on, subsequently, every week will be a regularly scheduled, maybe 10-minute steering call. And again, the stakeholder needs to be at that call. And then I put the search on pause if the stakeholder doesn't show up.
Right.
And so, And so then I can avoid all of the things that I've, that plagued the contingency search in the past. Constantly chasing the hiring manager for feedback for the candidate. So essentially to maintain more control of the process. And for me, what that is worth, to have that control, that's worth everything. I will absolutely give up that 40 mil a year in order to kind of keep that control, which I'm not planning to give up anytime soon. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully the good ones, the smart ones, the clients that is, understand that process and how it's better for them to engage in a retained search. And if they accept you, well, then they're a good client. Whereas contingency, it's all over the shop. You never have that access to the hiring manager, not very often. And it's the stress and all that. So you said 4.2 mil per project. That's for those in Australia, that's about $40,000 per project. And if you get a dozen, what'd you say, 10 a year or something, that's, well,
I'm
even that,
fine
half
to
that.
do 4 to 6. 4 to 6, I'm fine.
There you go. That's good money. That's good money. So this podcast is called Master Your Market. And the idea is, how do you market yourself as, small business owner, as a solo entrepreneur, let's say. It's your name in the market. You said before that people may not know Aristos and Mina, the name of your company, but they know Nick Mina. How do you get your name out there? How do you market yourself as, a recruiter in Tokyo?
Okay, so one of the things is, shifting the focus from talking about what I do to talking about the outcome of what I do and what I provide, right? So speaking more in terms of what the future looks like, so tying that with the consequences of inaction, right? So in my case, it's the purpose of my business is to stop the bleeding, mitigate disruption, prevent the domino effects of not bringing that solution in place. So stopping the bleeding in order to bring your business back to full capacity so you can drive the business forward. Okay, so kind of like going back to that F1, racing technician kind of metaphor. So thinking in those terms, that's really the purpose of the business. That's why it exists. And so I can't be all things to everyone. And what that does mean that if you don't fall within the parameters of you do need to stop the bleeding. Maybe you just you're looking to hire someone and you're okay if the person joins. The person will join 7-8 months later. Then maybe I'm not for you then, right? Because there's no urgency on your part. So I'm essentially solving two problems. One is the necessity to have a thorough search and the urgency. You want to solve the problem of urgency. So essentially both of those two things together is what I'm trying to market myself as.
I get that, but how do you, that's once you've had the conversation with the client, but a step back from that, how do you initiate that conversation? How do you find your clients? I suppose you've been at it for so long now that you've already got the bat phone there. You can ring up all the clients that you need to, and they know you. Mm-hmm. But if there's a new business that comes into the market, a new asset management company from the United States or Europe, are you still looking for clients, or have you found the clients that you need?
I have a lot of existing clients I can call upon, but yeah, I am still prospecting now, especially because I need to kind of introduce my solution to companies I haven't worked with in the past. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm trying to kind of make sure that I have pipelines in the future. So yes, I am still like reaching out to companies. And
how do you do that though? Is it
cold calling? The phone.
On LinkedIn, or how do you find them?
I find them. You can find them on LinkedIn, and then just call them. Just call them up and talk to the managing director, and just ask for the conversation. So
and you have no worries with doing that?
No, it's fine. That was one of the things that we did in the first year was, I called the president of that small company, and then I went a few years, kind of in the middle of these last 13 years, where I kind of played it safe and I just kept relying on that existing network of business. But now I've kind of gone back to that, that first year of prospecting. So it's a little bit more exciting now. So it is cold call prospecting. There's a great course. Benjamin Dennehy, the one I mentioned earlier, he has a cold call boot camp.
Right.
So that's helped a lot. So calling managing directors and with the goal of the call being to provoke an emotion, and then to ask to be invited in, to ask.
What do
if
you
this
mean
is worth
provoke an
exploring.
emotion? What do you mean by provoking
Well,
an
what
emotion?
I mean by that is that to kind of throw up 2 or 3 possibilities. For example, to say, like, I'm typically invited in by managing directors of asset management companies, and they tell me they are frustrated by agencies that are not committed to their business, and they tell me they are tired of agencies that are not accountable, who disappear, who don't let them know what's going on. And what really gives them frustration is the fact that it takes 4 to 6 months to make a hiring decision. But I don't suppose any of those problems are relevant to you in your world. Okay, so just trying to provoke an emotion, and then to ask to be invited in is kind of the approach I'm going with nowadays.
Right. Well, you're speaking to their pain points because you know it, and they're receptive to that, and so that allows you to open the door a crack, and they let you in. Do they speak English? I suppose they do.
Yes.
Yep.
Usually, like managing directors of, Japan subsidiaries of U.S. and European companies in Japan will have to, which is
because
fortunate.
They've got to report to their seniors overseas.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Which is fortunate for me because I'm, I think my Japanese speaking is izakaya chuhai level. So
the Japanese pub. Yes. Which is good, which is handy.
We do quite well. We do quite well at the izakaya with the salaryman. Yeah.
That's good. Now, you speak directly to decision makers, and I'll say that versus HR, which often aren't decision makers; they're more gatekeepers. Is that being is that a cliched? Am I being a bit controversial saying?
No,
HR
I consider.
gatekeepers, or are they?
I consider all talent acquisition and hiring managers to be stakeholders. So I try to speak to all of them. I think that they have different pain points, right? Obviously, with hiring managers, it is a focus on bringing their team back to full capacity so they can drive the business forward. But for talent acquisition, it's more about their concern is building a consensus with stakeholders and not stepping on people's toes, staying within not rocking the boat, staying within the bounds of status quo methods. But at the same time, I think they have their own metrics as well. They have their KPIs, and their reputation hinges on that. So that will be not just filling the role, which they do have to fill the role if they are internal talent acquisition, but they will be judged. They will be evaluated according to the number of interviews that they've set, qualified individuals that they've set. But also maybe on a personal note, I think that one of the things that drives them is, if you put you put yourself in the shoes of talent acquisition, they like the feeling of not letting their colleagues down and knowing that they are respected and valued. And so when you get to that point, 3 months into a search, and you get, it's the weekend and you want to go home, your talent acquisition, and you just want to go home and you want to bask in that glow, that feeling of of knowing that you're supporting the team, but then you get that email from the hiring manager. It's like 3 months into a search, and it's just asking like, anything? Is there nothing? And then that's just like that feeling in the pit of your gut when you go home, and that's what I think. That's one of the things that they do want to avoid, and that's kind of when I'm positioning my solution. I'm kind of trying to kind of like talk to them about that, because that's something that they're not going to think about at the beginning of a search, because that's a problem for, that's a problem for you down in the future. That's a problem for your future self 2 months, 3 months down the line, and you're not thinking about that, obviously, right?
Yep. Does your role as a recruiter involve the onboarding process?
What do you mean? Do you mean just
after the hiring has been made and they're working in the company? Are you involved with their 2 or 3, 6 months into the job, or does it finish once they've been hired?
No, I will catch up with them, especially now that I'm offering a 12-month replacement with my retained solution. So I do offer that I will do the search for free if they leave within that first 12 months. So I do want to make sure, So I do want to make sure that that I'm checking in with them at like 3 to 9 month intervals to make sure everything's going well. But yeah, there are things that we can do to mitigate that. So the other part of my process in the recruitment stage is that I will do the competency-based interview with them, 45-minute competency-based interview based on the top 2 or 3 behavioral competencies that the hiring managers want for the role.
Is that a point of difference with your competitors to offer 12-month free search? Sorry, what is it? 12 months. If they leave within 12 months to do another free search, is that different to what your competitors offer?
I'm actually not sure what my Japanese competitors offer.
Right.
I'm not sure. But mind you, though, Chris, I'm doing that in lieu of the typical rebate refund that we saw in contingency, where if you would leave in 3 months, then there would be 50% of the fee refunded.
Right. Yep. We've talked about a lot about what you're doing, and it's exciting what you're doing out on your own, doing retained search in one of the most exciting cities in the world, and pretty exciting industry as well. Anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
Well, I should give a shout out to my trainers, probably, at Retrain the Search. So Louise Archer and Jordan Taylor, right? So they are the ones that taught me about solution selling. I guess the other thing is, for me, since leaving Optia, going out on my own, and Optia was, for me, was best practices contingent recruiting. So that this is, the DNA of best practices recruiting, being surrounded by guys like you, Dave Klein, other great recruiters, and just, not being in that environment like other shops where we're having to get a certain number of CVs by the end of the week, where we are trying, even though we're contingently, we are working exclusively. And I would say, like, so grateful to have been there, to have developed myself there. And since leaving there, what's been the new learning curve for me is, of course, solution selling and writing better job ads through copywriting. So those have been the two areas of development since then. So, copywriting in the job ad, better job ads, trying to develop that, and also the solution selling aspect. That's been my obsession. So the last year and a half, just learning everything I can about sales, put my sales hat on, and trying to delve into the client's pain points and try to find that gap between their present state and their desired future state. Man, that is to be like at 47 and just getting into this now. This is where I wish we had been. But I don't regret anything because, when you think about it, if I had been at Optia in 2011 and just think about like calling up a client back then and then just, oh, Nick Son, of course, we've been waiting for your call. We've got a couple of retainers for you, right? There would have been no development at all. So it really, everything had to be this way. It had to be all of this series of obstacles, which then prompted me to think of ways to overcome them. Wouldn't trade it for anything. So for me, it's all about like learning to become sovereign, having more control over the process, and always learning and developing. But money is good as well. So
that's good. Is Japan home for you forever?
I reckon so.
But it's a good place to live.
It's a great place to live. It's a great place to live. It's a great, it's been very good to me.
Excellent. Nick, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's great to catch up with you, and we're going to catch up again one day. I'll be over there. If you ever come down to Oz, let me know. But I appreciate and I value our friendship and having spent all those years working with you. All the best, mate. Thank you for that.
It's very kind of you to say, man. Thank you. This has been great, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.